بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد الصادق الأمين. Good morning, my students. Welcome to our class number 13 in American Lit. Today we are going to continue reading and discussing Hucklberry. I think we did last time discuss until chapter 12. Today we are supposed to continue discussing these chapters like until 24. I know like a student is giving a presentation and even like we're going to have discussion. So I don't want like to talk long, but I want to see how did you find the chapters? How did you find chapter 13, for example? What is happening in chapter 13, 24, like until 24? Yes?
The first chapters were more interesting, but in this chapter we are encountering a new adventure, a new group of people. So we are introducing to some new genre of the society there.
So like we have more adventures.
Yes.
Like, and I think, you know, more adventures in the river. You're referring to the shipwreck itself, the Walter Scott, and like...
After the shipwreck. I forgot the name of the people he is meeting. The shepherds, the Duke,
Shepherdson and the Grangford. Yeah, the families, like those were in feud, yes?
I also think that metafiction is more dominant in these chapters because he is telling too many stories about different kinds of people. He met the king, the duke, and the gang.
Yeah, he started to tell more lies.
And he starts to tell us stories of lies.
And we agreed that telling lies is part of metafiction because our Picario is capable of telling stories. So there is no need like to for Tom's culture, who was retelling the stories, you know, as they were written in the book.
And he invented a lot of stories about his identity that when he meet a lot of families, he created a new
Yeah, like, yes, I think, you know, he's naming himself. If you remember in chapter 10, he was Sarah William. Now I think, you know, George Jackson, and sometimes, you know, George Peter, like, he keeps changing, and he keeps forgetting what names he gave. To the extent, if you remember, when he asked back, hey, can you spell like, you know, do you remember my name, the name I told you? And, you know, he started like to spell the name. So I think this is very symbolic because it has to do with the, you know, him rediscovering his own identity. So as we said, like in chapter 11, he was reborn as a fluid character. And he's in the process of forming his own character. Yes, there is, we witnessed, because he's not a flat character. Yeah, he was introduced as a boy. Then he changed a little bit, like after the rebirth, he started like to learn the lessons. And most of the lessons he was learning were lessons in the river, in nature. The Emersonians, you know, so he was very good at adapting himself. You know, he was in harmony with the natural world. Yes, Sahar, what do you want to say?
I want to say that there was like a hesitation chapter about like giving back to the principles of society and.
Yeah, this is in chapter 16, I think. You know, when he started like, yeah, when he went through a real conflict whether he should be submissive. Pardon? Yeah, let us like get more organized. Yes, Sahar, I am sorry.
I was totally like hesitated between these. Should he like be submissive to the society's rules and say that Jim is run away, or just like keep him as a friend?
Could you tell us what made him like take a decision, like, because you know he was in real conflict whether to submit, to be honest to the. Yeah, like what made him like, you know, back off? Because he was going to tell on him. But suddenly said, wait a minute, no, I'm not going to tell on him. Yes?
Because I think he said that he heard Jim saying that Huck is
Yeah, like, yeah, he was listening to, Huck, to Jem, like speaking about him, speaking highly of him, appreciating his support and help. So if you want, like, to turn, like, your shoulder to a person like this, it would be a shameful thing. So he came to the conclusion that he should help. And we see Huck, like we see the human side of Huck when he also did not want to leave those thieves, the king and the duke, and even like earlier, the robbers in the Walter Scott when they were trapped in the shipwreck. Okay, good.
Yes. Another thing is the desire of expansion, because he thinks a lot about reaching Cairo, and every time he goes from one place to another, and he said, this is not Cairo, and I have to complete. So he is full of the desire to be an
To reach Cairo, because Cairo is the place.
Dangerous, like things would face him.
But like I think then suddenly they passed the river and they were in a place that they should go south rather than
And they missed it.
Okay, and I think after that Twain stopped the novel for 2 years. So like there was a narrative, crisis in the narrative, because the further you go south, the more you are going to the world of the slavery. But later we understand that Twain, was very clever, because here we have to contrast all the time between the values of the river and the values of the city. So, like, it is the values of the river, the values of the nature, which will enable him to emancipate Jem. Okay. Yes, please.
Also, what I noticed in this chapter that adventures were more serious and have moral lesson, and even the nature of Huck, he becomes more mature and
he's developing. He's developing emotionally, rationally. He's developing, and to some extent, he was able to take moral decisions, to discriminate between right and wrong according to his idiosyncratic principles, like his personal principles, which were developed by nature. So he's not repeating, he's not imitating. We have, you could say, self-reliance. He's developing a moral code, an individual moral code, which is based on the right thing, on not the wrong thing. And we have this irony when he was wondering whether when he was speaking about which is right to tell on him back and to bring him back to Miss Watson or to keep him. So there was an irony. Who was doing wrong? What is the wrong and what is the right? See? Okay, good. So this is like your general response. I know some of you might have deeper response, but like Sarah seems to have something concrete, and I think she's going to read her response. So you are welcome. You are invited to read your response, Sarah.
Okay, good morning. Well, I prefer to write my response about the whole chapters, the 45 chapters. I liked it like this. I prefer to respond to the whole novel after ending up the reading it. And here I am. It is 2:30 actually in the morning, and I can't wait till the morning to write my response. So the humorous situations and the current occurrences while reading a lot, and I can tell that the suspense of his adventures was important. But his funny character is the main cause that made me patient to read those 45 chapters. I wonder how a poet can expose all illnesses of the society in such a humorous way. In a second, I thought that he might be seen like Bassem Youssef, who is mocking his society through his humorous programs. The presence of the nature is totally romantic, and which shows how the nature united her and helped him to escape, to emancipate Jem, and to accomplish all these adventures. Actually, when I thought about nature, I think that Twain
intending to use the river as a symbol for a character who is controlling their life, because the river is controlling their fate and leading them along these adventures. I like how the settings of the novel are clear. The place, which is the Mississippi and the South, and the direction in particular has a certain interpretation. The time is before the Civil War. I like this combination of this humorous aspects that the main American disease that Twain is trying to discuss here is slavery, which was common before the Civil War, and he chooses the direction of the South because slavery was common in the South, like Africa. It is funny how Huck misspells the word civilized as civilized with S, which introduces him as a beginner in reading and writing. And regarding the idea of slavery again, we notice at the end that he preferred to have a new adventure in India at the end. Why in particular do you think? He may want to be that effective in exiling slavery from there, as it is considered the capital of slaves, as Emirates used to call. When talking about Huck, his humorous character is not everything. He is hiding a wise guy who understands everything goes around. Actually, I don't consider his character as a simple one. He has an internal conflict in what we call behavior conflict, that he is confused whether to follow the values of his society or to follow the human values which are deep in his conscience. At the end, the good side of him wins, and when as being a friend to Jim and understand the friendship has nothing to do with colors, though he contradicts with what he has come up. So I can stop here because it is too long.
Okay, no problem.
No problem. Okay.
It's enjoyable. So it shows how much time he put in reading this book.
Okay. To continue, this situation approves us the independent guy who depends on his logic to judge things. Besides his flexibility, that yes, if I want to do something, that it is yes. If something is wrong, I can change my mind. So it is he's a round character. Also, I like.
So this is very important. Like we are talking about self-reliance.
Yes, I'm talking about it.
Yeah, and this is like a famous American value, self-reliance, which was stressed by Benjamin Franklin in his autobiography. Read Benjamin Franklin and see how self-reliance is stressed, as an American value.
Okay. I like how Huck preferred to be brought by his own and has his own experiences in life by escaping away from Mrs. Waston and his refusal at the end to be adopted by Tom's family. And even when he has adopted by Granford's family, he escaped away as if Twain intended to tell that a boy like Huck has no interest with families and such restrictions. He likes to be free and emancipated as much as people emancipate as much people as he can. Anyway, regarding the novel, I see that it is a perfect American text, since it declares a lot of the American aspects, directly or indirectly. First, when it discusses the theme of slavery, which I talked about previously, then the theme of feminism, how Twain intended to show women as being with purposes, and they do something humane. Mrs. Douglas, who adopted him, and her sister, who took care of him and tried their best to maintain his behavior. Besides, Mrs. Waston, when she emancipated Jim before her death, is a prose added to her as a woman, and I think this can be considered as the beginning of the achievements of Huck's whole adventures. Then the newly resistant woman who disguised as Sarah and went to her home to have some information about what is going in the village. She was portrayed as a smart woman. She knew that Sarah was not a girl from the very beginning, and that was arrested to her after the needle test.
But at the same time, she was not good at telling stories.
Yes.
Okay.
In contrast to him. Twain intended to paint an image of helpful, smart, and respectful woman. Twain is feminist, since he uses the number of 3 when he specified the rewording as 300, as well as we have three good women. Moreover, self-reliance is represented here. He is depending on himself in everything and seeks to fit his interest. I like the hobby on pretending of Hux. It is really funny. He pretended twice, once as a girl who's Sarah, and the second as Tom. The theme of friendship is portrayed in an interesting way here. We have two beautiful friendships, one between Jim and Huck, and the other is between Tom and Huck. I like how they are honest and do their best to be beside each other. How Huck spent a whole journey and lied to help Jim, and how Tom continued the trek with him at the end of those chapters on his auntie. The theme of family is misrepresented since he always gave it up. The materialistic life is perfectly picturized, that all characters are trying to get money. His father, the two men who took him to France, the king who sold Jim just for $14, and the conflict between Grandford and Shepherd families is upon money also. Death and murder is exposed in the novel for twice. Once when his father was shot in the hut and Jim prevented him to see the flesh, and we know that this is a kind of humanity found. And the second time is the sense of conflict between the Grandford family and Shepherd's family. Finally, the structure of the novel can be perfectly portrayed as a film and frankly, when I started reading I remember Mowgli and the Jungle. Adventures of Huckleberry Finn are interesting and greatly recommended.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sarah. This is very entire, response. She almost articulated most of the important themes. I know it's fun to be done with a book like this and even to come to conclusion. Yes, we have a lot of American characteristics. We have this allegorical aspect. We have a lot of American motifs. We have this search for identity. And overall, we have the signs of an epic, a great epic, because, to some extent, it's like Odyssey. Every time he embarks on a journey, he goes out, he gets some wisdom, some lessons, and he comes back to apply this to help people. So, yes, this is an interesting book. We have a child who started a child, but he ended up by having, values, grown-up values, mature values, not the values the values of the sanctimonious people. And when I say sanctimonious, because there was caustic criticism of religion right from the very beginning, even with the Shepherdson, because the Shepherdson were pious people, they were southern people. The Bible was there, but you might have observed how the dust was perching on the Bible, and how come you are religious people and you are fighting over silly things like the feud issue, and then the Duke and the money. It is this book in fact is entire, and it is true that when Hemingway said this is the source of all American literature, I think this judgment is valid if we read the book thoroughly. I know the presenter is impatient and she wants to come to the podium to give her presentation. After her presentation, I would share with you some important quotations. She might touch upon these quotations. Okay, we'll see if she touches upon certain quotations I prepared for you. I would leave them. Okay, you are invited to come here and to replace me. Okay.
Okay, hello everybody. My name is Ahsan, and I'm going to present the second 12 chapters from The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Hopefully you'll enjoy my presentation. I want to start my presentation with a quote. Taj, in the last presentation provided a quote by Hemingway. I wanted to read a quote from the author of the classic epic Don Quixote. He wrote critique about the whole novel, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, and he says, in Huckleberry Finn we find everything that is quite essentially American woven into a rank and stinking cloth with which the nation can adorn its corpulent head, like a modern crown of thorns for a pretender king, if you will. All that swells and reels within the worst of us, all that we recoil from the disgust, all that is funky, dark, and pestilent, it all begins to ooze out the moment you rack open a copy of Huckleberry Finn. So what he's saying that in this novel we can find the whole American features we are searching for, especially through the characters of Huck, the slave hunters, the two families in these chapters, and about like everything in the novel tells about the American society in general. So let's start with the first chapter, or it is chapter 13. I prefer to call it Huck's kindness because in this chapter we can see his kindness, his humanity, and his morals. I'll tell a brief summary in each chapter and analysis and quotes. So firstly, in chapter 13, the three people, Jim, Jake, and Bill. Jake and Bill wanted to kill Jim because of money. So Huck wanted to notify the authorities about these three murderers. But then he changed his mind, and instead he helped them. So, those people are murderers, but Huck wanted to help them. So we have this quote in chapter 13. Huck says, "Then Jim manned the oars, and we took out after our raft. Now was the first time that I began to worry about the men. I reckon I had not had time to before. I began to think how dreadful it was, even for murderers, to be in such a fix. I says to myself, there ain't no telling, but I might come to be a murderer myself yet, and then how would I like it?" So he is putting himself in their place. He doesn't want them to die, so he helped them. So we can say that Huck doesn't care about the social class. He's just following his intuition. He is helping people. And also in this chapter, we can see his smartness, and we can see that he is very intelligent. And this appears when he wakes up the sleeping watchman in the boat, and he invents his first lie in my chapters. He says that in the boat there's his mother and father and a rich lady. They're stuck on the wreck, and he wanted the watchman to help them. And now this is a conversation between Huck and the watchman. The watchman says, "By Jackson, I'd like to," Huck asked him to help his father and mother and the other people. So the watchman says, "By Jackson, I'd like to," and blame it. "I don't know, but I will. But who in the dignations are going to pay for it? Do you reckon your Bob?" And then Huck says, "Why, that's all right. Miss Hawker, she told me particular that her uncle Hornback," and then the watchman responds, "Great guns, is he her uncle? Looky here." So in this conversation, we can see that the watchman at the beginning was reluctant whether he want to help Huck or not. But after, when he heard that the rich lady in the wreck is her uncle is Hornback. Hornback is a rich man. He decided to help Huck, and he started to tell him how he can save his mother and father. So we can deduce that this watchman is a materialistic person. So this chapter shows Huck's humanity, kindness, creativity, and smartness, and the goodness of the hero, who is Huck, versus the cruelty of others, the murderers and the watchman. And now chapter 14, I called it Kings because it was mainly about kings, Solomon and Lewis. Yeah. And yes, the harem. I'll tell about this. Yes.
It's like the Arabic word harim.
Yes. So in this chapter, Huck tells Jim that King Solomon has had a harem of wives. And then, Jim was really confused. He tells Huck that it is not a wise man who would have a lot of wives, because they are fighting with each other all the time. And then when Huck surrendered with dealing with Jim and arguing with him, he turned the talk to the French King Louis, and it was even worse, because Jim cannot understand how can a king, how can he talk in a language rather than English. So in this chapter, a contrast is made between Huck and Jim. We know that Huck is basically uneducated, but we know that he can read and he can write. And he knows things about history because, Miss Watson was educating him. On the other hand, Jim sounds more ignorant. He doesn't know a lot about history. He thinks that the only language in the world is English and the only king is Solomon. So these are quotes. The first quote, Will, he was right. He was most always right. He had an uncommon level head for a nigger. Huck says this. And the next quotation, I never see such a nigger. If he got a notion in his head once, there weren't no getting out again. He was the most down on Solomon of any nigger I ever see. So in these two chapters, we can see that Huck is still calling Jim the nigger. So we can deduce that he is not like.
In fact, here, there is criticism of polygamy, and there is criticism of the Bible, which allows slavery. Because here, Jim's attitude towards the Bible is very negative one. Because the Bible, good Christians are good slave masters. Yes. See, so how come this is an ironical thing?
There's another thing about the man that gave Huck some money to.
It's in the next.
And how come? He's kind, but at the same time he's with slavery.
Yes.
So
it's in the next chapters.
Okay. Go ahead. Let's see.
كلام سيدي شغال عندي باخذ اللابتوب مباشرة.
So let's go back to the quotations. The first one, well, he was.
So it's very disturbing, the word nigger.
Yeah.
But let's see, when I was living in America, African American were kidding with each other. Hey, you nigger, So we assume that, this friendship or the intimate relationship between Huck and Jim made him tease him, So it's a kind of teasing rather than stigmatizing him. It's a kind, they are two buddies, so they can do this, But it's very disturbing to African American, and that's why the book was banned from school.
But he never conversed with Jim saying you are a nigger or something.
Yeah.
He's telling us that he has, for example, an uncommon level head for a nigger. He's telling us this.
Yeah, but I never such a nigger if he got a notion it seems like he's talking about this. He's cherishing this friendship.
Yes.
He's not antagonistic. He's not criticizing him. I never see such a nigger. If he got a notion in his head, there wasn't anything getting again.
Yes, he's praising him.
He was trying to describe how adamant he was, and I think this is very important because this would.
So the third quote here, this is by Jim. He says, "Why, Huck? Don't the French people talk the same way we does?" So here he sounds very ignorant. He doesn't know anything about the other languages. He never even heard about French people, about the French language, even if it is, it is so popular. And in that time, maybe it equals English. So
the question is like, since people are talking, like whether the same language or a different language, don't have they common thing to share, which is like they are a human being. So the notion of slavery is like here being criticized. Okay.
So this is a conversation between, or an argument between Huck and Jim. Let's read it. First Huck is talking. Well then, why ain't it natural and right for a Frenchman to take different from us? You answer me that. And then Jim says, is a cat a man, Huck? No. Well then, they ain't no sense in a cat talking like a man. Is a cow a man? And is a cow a cat? No, she ain't either of them. Well, then she ain't got no business to talk like either one of the other of them. Is a Frenchman a man? And Huck says yes. Jim, well then, Dad blame it. Why don't he talk like a man? You answer me that. And then he says, I see it were not no use wasting words. You cannot learn a nigger to argue, so I quit. In his place, I'd quit too.
Yeah.
So there is a point here that, about slavery, that, this is a slave, but he's disturbed because all human beings cannot talk using the same language. He wants people to understand each other, to use one language in order to have that sense of communication between them. And chapter 15, when Huck tried to fool Jim, firstly they started their journey to Cairo. They wanted to reach it in about 3 days. On the second night, a fog begins to form, and they were separated. Huck takes a nap, and after he wakes up, he searched for Jim, and he finds him. He pretends that he was sleeping beside him all the time, and when Jim wakes up, he was really happy to see that Huck was sound and alive, and he hugged him and was so happy. But Huck told him that yes, I was sleeping beside you. Are you drunk or something? Yes, he fooled him. Yes, and then when Jim realizes that Huck is tricking him, he apologized. So the analysis, we can see that Huck is an immature here, maybe for the first time, but he was kidding with Jim. Some critics says the following, that he still thinks that Jim is a slave, a piece of property. It has not dawned on the native Huck that Jim has real human feelings, but I do not agree with this. He was just playing and tricking, He's a kid. Yeah.
Child.
Yes, he's a child. So after that, Huck feels terrible and asks for forgiveness. This is a sign for responsibility in his character. And this is also a sign of respect to the slave, Jim. He respects him. So this is a quote from chapter 15, when Huck comes back and Jim sees him. Jim says, "Goodness gracious, is that you, Huck? And you ain't dead, you ain't drowned. You's back again. It's too good for true, honey. It's too good for true. Let me look at you, child. Let me feel of you. No, you ain't dead. You are back again, live alive and sound. Just the same old Huck. Thanks to goodness. The language is really strange. So
It's vernacular. It's vernacular.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting. Like the idea of rebirth is revisited again.
Yes.
Like we have Picari, who's reborn all the time.
Yes.
He's, this is like he's regenerated. Like he's getting rid of all the residual things of the civilization value. See what I mean?
Yes. And again, in this quote, we can observe that Twain is trying to portray Jim as a human being. He is full of humanity. He is happy because he saw his friend sound and alive. At chapter 16, it's when Jim says that the rattlesnake does its work. So what's happened in chapter 16? Huck and Jim continues their way to Cairo. Jim believes that it is the place for freedom. He will be free for the first time in his life in Cairo. And Huck suddenly lived that conflict inside him, whether he wants to tell about Jim or to not to tell. And after that, a skiff comes along, and two armed slave hunters came, and they asked him about whether he belongs to the raft or not. He says that he is, and he invented his another story. This is part of the metafiction, as Ra said. He's inventing a lot of lies. So he says that his father on the raft, and he's suffering from smallpox. So the armed hunters got afraid, and they decided to give him $20 or something like this, and they ran away. After that, Jim and Huck realizes that they passed Cairo, and that they lost their canoe, and they flew down the Mississippi. A steamboat rams into the raft, and Huck and Jim were separated. After that, Huck swims ashore, and he found himself in front of a house surrounded by dogs. So now you know that that in Huck's society it's a racist society. Saving a slave is a sin for them. And now Huck is torn between his relationship to his society and his relationship to Jim. He decided to save Jim. So he proves that his innate sense of right and wrong was stronger than what his society has taught him. And we can say something about Twain here. When Jim was talking, he says that I'll work day and night in order to free my children and my wife out of slavery. And then he says that I will steal them if I could not buy them from my master. So here Twain is tending to say that we have two sins, enslaving people and stealing. But it's okay to steal in front of enslaving people. It's a shame to enslave people.
Graver sin, like to enslave people or to steal. So stealing here is a less sinful than enslaving.
Yes. And we can say something about the men, the slave hunters. They soothe their conscience by giving Huck $20. We can say that they are inhumane. They are totally materialistic. They believe that they can replace humanity with money. Quotes. The first quote by Huck. They talked about Cairo a lot. Huck gives a stereotype image about Cairo, and Jim, on the other hand, gives a new image for us to read. Huck says, and wondered whether we could know it when we got to it. I said likely we wouldn't, because I had heard say there weren't but about a dozen houses there. And if they did not happen to have them lit up, how was we going to know we was passing a town? So he has that stereotypical image about these southern places, that they are not inhabited with too much people. It's a common image for us as readers. The second image, it's a new image for us. Jim says, he said, Huck said this about Jim. He said he'd be mighty sure to see it because he'd be a free man the minute he seen it. So Jim is thinking of Cairo as a free state. He even called it after that as the Free State. So he's thinking of it as the place for freedom for him. And the third quotation is about the conflict that Huck lived. He says, "What the poor Miss Watson done to you that you could see her nigger go off right under your eyes and never say one single word." So he is torn between his society, between his conscience, his feelings toward Jim. So this is the conflict. Chapter 17.
And like this chapter has the largest irony because, he thought it would be sin to like keep Jim, to hide Jim. And when he decided to tell, and I think he wrote a letter, he said, I was washed out of sin. This is very ironical because it was not a sin at all. What sin you're talking about? So the sin is like to keep the slave, a slave. The sin is to tell on him.
Yes.
So when he said, I was washed out of sin, he was talking about, the sin of not being in conformity with the values of your society.
Yes.
Which was, a real sin, I think.
Yeah. So in chapter 17, in the last chapter, we can see that Huck was standing in front of a house surrounded by dogs. So those people, he was calling, someone approached and he asked him about his name. He invented another name. Maybe it's the fourth name, I think.
George Jackson.
George Jackson. It's, the search for identity. So Huck is taken upstairs by Buck. He was about his age and he was given a new clothes. So this family treated him in a very good way. So Huck invented another lie here. He says that he was living a great life, and but his father and mother died, and brothers, and his sister running off. This is the third lie in my chapters. So when he wakes up in the morning, he forgets his name. That was really funny. But he turns to Buck and he asked him to spell his name, and he remembered what was his name. Now, if you read the chapter, we can see the twin provided a description for the house in which the family was living in. Well, it was a description for the aristocratic plantation life. They were living in large houses. Each member of the family has a servant, and so on. So this is a quote. And when I waked up in the morning, drat it all, I had forgot what my name was. So I laid there about an hour trying to think. And when Buck waked up, I says, "Can you spell Buck?" "Yes," he says. "I bet you cannot spell my name," says I. "I bet you what you dare I can," says he. "All right," says I, "go ahead." So he spells the name. "There now," he says. Well, says I, "you done it, but I did not think you could. It ain't no slutch of a name to spell right off without studying." So, it's too funny.
But as I said, this is rediscovering the self. It's an
Search
issue of
for identity, yes.
So getting somebody to spell your name, to make sure, okay, it's like you are rediscovering your identity to some extent.
Yeah.
Like you became, you're confused, and then somebody is affirming this for you.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
very symbolic.
We have along now chapter 18. It's about the two families, the Granger Fords and Chibersons. So Huck was introduced to the head of the family, who is Colonel Grandford. He is a tall man, skinny man. He has 5 children: Bob, Tom, Charlotte, Sophie, and Buck. Another plantation family was living in the same place, the Chibersons. They were equal. They have the same respect, the same reputation, and they have a feud between them for almost 30 years. One day, Huck and Buck was walking in the woods, and they saw a person called Harvey Chiberson. Buck shoots at him, and he missed the point. Huck and Buck tried to escape, and they escaped. And when Huck asked Buck about the reason why he shoots him, he said that the two families had a feud. And then when he asked about the reason, he said that he doesn't know the reason. And
It's very funny, You know, it started, but they forgot about the real story, how it started, but they still keep fighting each other. So how naive, how gullible, how terrible these people are. Okay.
So in the next Sunday, the two families were at church, and
Look at them. They go to the church, but they kill each other.
yes, and
Fight each other. This is a lesson for us as Palestinians. We are brothers and sisters, but we are fighting each other. We hate each other. Come on. Okay.
and they went to the church, which is a religious place with guns, and the sermon was about a brotherly love, ironically. And now Sophie, one of the daughters, she come to Huck and asks him to make her a favor, that she forgets her Bible in the church, that she wants him to give it back to her. And when Huck is too curious, he grabbed the Bible and shakes it. He found a piece of paper, yes, with the words "have passed to." So and after that,
so they were in love with each other. Love and agronomy do not work.
They were planning to
ironic.
escape.
They are fighting and their kids are in love with each other. So this is like an allusion to Romeo and Juliet.
Yes.
See what I mean?
Yes. And after that, the servant or the nigger of Huck takes him to a place. He wanted to show him something, and it was Jim there. After that, and during the night, Sophie and Huckleberry Shepherdson ran away, and they caused another feud between the two families. Huck goes and finds Jim, and they leave on the raft.
They eloped.
Yes.
This is elopement.
And now the analysis in this chapter, we can see that Twain is providing a contrast between two lives: the life on the raft or the natural life, and the life on shore. We have a quote. Now Huck and Buck is talking, and Huck for the first time heard the word feud. He doesn't know what it means. So he said, "Never heard of it before, the word. Tell me about it." "Well," says Buck, "a feud is this way. A man has a quarrel with another man and kills him. Then that other man's brother kills him. Then the other brothers on both sides goes for one another. Then the cousins chip in, and by everybody's killed off. And there ain't no more feud, but it's kind of slow and takes a long time." And here we can make a comparison between Huck and Buck. Huck sounds very romantic here, and he is very innocent, but Buck, although they were in the same age, but Buck is ready to kill in his age.
So again, we have contrast.
Yes, comparison. And the Twin is, he's all the time trying to make a comparison between Huck and the other people in the novel. And also Twin is trying here to talk about to criticize the violence between the two families and that ridiculous sense of humor between them. This quote, when Huck asked about the reason of the feud and whether Buck's Bob know about it. So Buck says, "Oh yes, Ba knows, I reckon, and some of the other old people, but they do not know now what the row was about in the first place." So even his father and the old people doesn't know the reason, and this is the sense of honor that they have. It's too ridiculous. Again, the idea of the search of identity. He called himself George Jackson, and we can notice that he is giving himself names on shore. But when he is in nature and on the raft, he is happier. And a quote, the second quote, we said, "There were no home like a raft after all." He loves the natural life more than the other life.
Like being in a city or a town, like facing corrupted people, facing materialistic civilization. Okay.
And also we can notice Jim's devotion to Huck. He can escape when they separated, but he did not. He waited for Huck and saved him. And chapter 19, the Duke and the Dolphin. It's when Huck meet those two people. They asked him about Jim and whether he is a runaway slave. He did not reply.
Could you go to the analysis
Okay.
of the chapter?
So here, Twain describes the peaceful qualities, the same idea that the peaceful qualities of life on shore, on the river. It is important to know this Huck description at the very beginning of the chapter. He was describing the sunrise and the river in a very poetic way. And this is the struggle between nature and the struggles of the society. And also here, Huck shows his practical side again, when he decides not to tell the two hunters that he know about what they are planning to. Chapter 20, it's also about Duke and Duffin. The worst thing they did in this chapter is they made fake advertisements. You know, they are liars. They printed a picture for Jim, offering a reward of $200 for him. So the analysis here, we have a contrast or a comparison between Huck and the two people, the Duke and the Duffin. Huck in this chapter waves another story about his identity, about his family, but and even with the other lies, he's doing this for a good purpose. For example, by this lie, he wanted to protect Jim. On the other hand, the Duke and the Duffin, they wave stories also, but they did it to trick people and harm them and to steal their money. Also in this chapter, Twain is criticizing the gullibility of the society. They are too naive. They believe the two men. And now chapter 21 and 22. I'll skip them because they are repeating the same ideas. And now chapter 23. Here Huck realizes that the town people are gullible and easily swayed. So he says, next day you couldn't hear nothing around the town, but how splendid the show was, the show that the two men did. The people of the town were happy and they believed them, so they were too gullible and easily swayed. And he decides, he said something about kings, that they are all mighty, ordinary. And finally, when in this chapter also, Jim tells Huck a story about his daughter and how much he loved her. It was like a great story from Jim, and we have a hidden contrast here. Yes, we can make a comparison between Bob, Huck's father, and between Jim as a father. You know, Jim was a great father, but Bob was the worst father. Huck says about Jim, I do believe he cared just as much for his people as white folks does for their own. And that's it. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Hassan, for this, presentation. I know it's not easy to present like 12 chapters. Yes, here we have real adventures, and I think, Huck should be proud. These are the real adventures, and I think, all the time he would say, I wish Tom had come and seen me. It's very interesting how Huck is developing, how Huck's relationship with Jim is further augmented, how Huck is like telling the story, and at the same time, like Jim has something to tell. Like when they talk about language, it's a kind of what we say grotesque. What is grotesque? Like to keep making fun of something in order to achieve something. Like what they wanted to say, like, because people are human beings, so they should talk language, There is no point in slavery, Since people are talking language, so why aren't they equal? Why? So the notion of slavery is questioned here. Again, like there is severe criticism of religion, The book started by criticizing those sanctimonious people, Lady Douglas and Miss Watson. And here again we have criticism of those southern people who were going to church, yet they were fighting each other. We also have criticism of everybody, like, is money. Money is moving. Like, money is the, like those, the Duke and the King were just like blackmailing people. And they were, by their stories, by acting, you know, Romeo and Juliet, and people would believe them. And they would cry. So here, like, again, we have a lot of metafiction. The metafiction, like, starting from the Walter Scott, because he was criticizing Walter Scott. He thought that that way of romanticism, or British romanticism, was dying. It was decaying. It's like a shipwreck. And again, like, we have this gullibility of people, like, they are, or they are tuned to sentimental literature. Like, all the time, they are fond of sentimental literature. So they were crying, they were changing their attitude. You might have seen this. So metafiction is there. Like, our Huck is getting, I mean, our hero is getting more mature. He's developing his own principles. His, yes, he's more adamant to free Jim, to freeing Jim. I think we might blame him, like, in keeping aside in when the Duke and the King were playing. He was watching, but when those tricks were going to harm people, we would see him jumping, interfering. And I think that's what we see with the Willick later, like in the following chapters, when Huck would, I mean, when the Duke and they would, yeah, take the money of the orphans. So it's a very interesting book, I think. I wanted to share with you the quotations, but it seems we run out of time. So next time we are going to see another presenter, and hopefully we can show you or share with you the quotations. Thank you very much for being very active today. I wish you continue reading and participate more. Thank you.